Welcome everyone to Real Talk with Tula Cabone and the hip hop esthetician Lady T. As you can see, her and Sister Nigel Jermaine are looking ghetto. Well, no, fabulistic. And I'm just looking fabulous with the brother here and brother Joel. But no, we want to say thank you for appearing on the show today. This is our first TV show. So, we want to ask everybody to be patient with us as we move on. And, we just want to, first of all, thank God that we're here. Because if we're here, that means God has gave us a message to give to you. And any day above ground is a good day. So now, as you know, I'm going to turn it over to the famous hip-hop esthetician, Lady T.
Once again, welcome to Real Talk with Tula Cabone and the hip-hop esthetician, Simply Lady T. We thank you for joining us in TV land. Also, if you're joining us via podcast, we thank you for joining us via podcast. And again, we want to welcome to the show Miss Nigel Jermaine and Mr. Joel Jones. Today we're going to talk about mental illness in the Black community. And hopefully you will be able to learn a lot from this topic on today, this radio show, this show on today. And at the end of the show, we will give out some imperative information for you to follow up. And if you have a family member or a friend who is in need of any mental illness support, we hope that this information will serve as a catalyst to, including the show, will serve as a catalyst to get the help that your loved one needs.
Well, first I want to start out by saying, if I may, I want to give a definition of what they call trauma response, and we can kind of branch out from that. So a trauma response is where you are dealing with a situation that's a little bit dramatic than what you normally deal with. So your body kind of come into a reaction. Mm-hmm. Okay, you just go into this, okay, I got to instinctively respond. And you in a trauma mode. And what a psychologist named Janelle Agnew stated is that African Americans are always in trauma response. Trauma response is not meant to stay with you. Mm-hmm. It's meant to leave you, like she was giving a scenario, analogy of a bear being in the woods. When you see the bear, you automatically, instinctively get fear. You get fear, you react, and that's it. Mm-hmm. Well, we stuck in trauma response. Mm-hmm. And psychologically, we don't know that. So from there, I'll turn it over to Lady T.
Well, good brother, to me, trauma response would be indicative of like a PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So that's carrying on, that trauma, what you're describing as trauma response. And I have a few things written down. That overall mental health conditions occur in the Black and African communities at about the same or less frequency than in white America. However, the historical Black or African American experience in America has and continues to be characterized by trauma and violence more often than other communities, and impacts emotional, mental health of both the youth and adults. 16% and that's 4.8 million people in the Black African American community report having mental illness. 22.4%, and that's 1.1 million, report having serious mental illness. So oftentimes we see, in our community, it's gotten a lot better across time, but in our community, we've talked about this before, where we're not as apt to get help when there's a mental breakdown, where there's depression or schizophrenia, or again, PTSD. I see that a lot in brothers in the Black community, where it's taboo in our community to not only talk about this, but to go and get help for these different mental illness or different mental conditions. And so it has become more popular as time have progressed, that we are able to talk about it more, and people are your loved ones, our siblings, our friends, now it's okay to say, hey, I went and laid on the couch. It's cool to do that now, to seek out therapy. but at first it was not. So we have Sister Nigel with us on today, and you're very familiar with some of the mental illness in the community. Would you care to share what this topic means to you and how it has affected you?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much
My
for
pleasure.
having me.
My pleasure.
It's really an honor to be here and to talk about this subject because it's very important for all of us. I personally had a sister that was technically diagnosed, although I think all of us could get a label.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And she was actually diagnosed as bipolar with manic depressive.
Okay.
So she would have these real erratic mood swings. And it just took such a toll on our family. Just since I've been born, we've dealt with my sister's mental health issues and her children, and just watching all the things that they would have to go through, having a mother that suffered from mental illness and everything. And she recently made her transition in 2019. God rest her soul. So she's no longer troubled, in her spirit in that way. But it just gripped our family. Everything was really centered around her and her illness and how it impacted us on a daily basis.
Now, was she clinically diagnosed that way,
She
or
was.
were we? So here's what happens in our community. I've noticed, and you probably can say the same. In our community coming up, they would just say they're crazy. Mm-hmm. And there was never anything clinical attached to that because, again, it was taboo to go to a therapist or go to a doctor who would then send you to a therapist and talk about and seek help behind that. And so there's the community saying she crazy or he's crazy, and then there's clinically diagnosed mental disorder, mental illness, mental dis-ease. And so you're saying that she was actually clinically diagnosed that way.
She was in and out of mental health facilities. I remember going there as a young girl. And it was just such a struggle for my mom because this was just all new. She was 17 years my senior, but I have very vivid memories of my sister. And the struggle was she was never able to get a therapist that really cared about her.
Okay.
And to get her the right combination of medication to balance her out. So after a while, she just took matters into her own hand and she self-medicated with alcohol and marijuana. Because I just remember she took some medicine one time and it made her swell up.
Wow.
And then she would be like she would drool and like in a really dazed state. And that was no way to live.
Right.
It was the marijuana and the weed for me. Like it was just very heart-wrenching to see her in that state because we just struggled finding someone that really cared to give our family the support she needed.
Let me ask you, how did that affect her children? I mean, and I think the reason I'm asking that, because a lot of people don't, in my opinion, some people don't understand that when they have a mental illness, how it affects the children. How the children look at it, because it's natural for a child to love their mom. But when you think mom is being mean, for some reason that you don't understand, then it becomes somewhat confusing.
Yeah.
So how did that affect the children, and was the children in counseling as a result of that?
Well, unfortunately, we didn't get to counseling for my nephew. She had 4 boys, but they were greatly impacted. My mother raised her oldest child, and he's more like my brother than my nephew. And then the family collectively raised my younger nephews because she would just be in and out, and sometimes she would disappear, and then she would reappear, and it was just such a thing. But my nephews, they would struggle with being embarrassed in front of their friends, before they came to understand my sister's mental health challenges, and because she was cussing everybody out. That's what you gotta know, okay?
Wow.
She was gonna put some cuss word combos together.
Not the combo. And it's not funny, but you do have to kind of make light of it the best that you can,
just to bear it.
Yeah. And so what I hear is oftentimes what happens, and none of us are or therapists or anything of that nature. But in my field, dealing with the public for the past 30 years, I see a lot of sisters, who are disturbed in some form or fashion, as soon as they wake up in the morning. And then being single, in the dating pool, I see a lot of brothers who have post-traumatic stress disorder from childhood, from just the community that they've grown up in, from the household, from environmental. So it's a lot of that goes on. But the stigma of it all, is a part of it, and being judgmental, and so that stops a lot of people from going for help as well. True. And then also, we have a tendency in the Black community to deal with it on a faith-based versus clinical.
And I think, man, we really got to understand that the pastor can only do so much.
Absolutely.
He can pray, but sometimes when you got them chemical imbalances and all that stuff, you need medication.
Definitely.
And sometimes, somebody in the church got to say amen, but we still take it to the psychologist. And that's just what it is. And I don't think that there's a problem with that. But I'm just piggybacking off what the hip-hop esthetician lady, Simple Lady T, said. A lot of brothers, man, we be in denial. We got this fake image we want to live up to, the Nino Brown. So when a brother say something wrong with you, ain't nothing wrong with me, but pass me that joint. Pass me that alcohol. Because you're drowning your problems out with alcohol and weed, or whatever. So, I was
or just violence or anger.
We normalize that.
Yeah.
We normalize that. That's trauma response.
Right.
Absolutely.
We normalize a lot of behavior in our community that has to do with violence that we should normalize.
Absolutely.
You see a brother shooting somebody in broad daylight or somebody shooting at him. That's suicidal. But what makes you think that's okay? That's a mental illness. I was looking at the thing for ShotSpotter last night, and the police show a guy get out of his car, just this month, September the 20th. He gets out and starts shooting a gun in there at the gas station. The brother was standing from me to where the brother right here sitting, and he didn't move. He stood there like it was normal.
And it is, unfortunately, it is the norm in our community to see these type of instances and don't even respond. It doesn't even affect us anymore. So and then they carry that on. It becomes locked in our memory, and then it comes out. Rather it's come out at home, rather it comes out in the streets, it comes out of you.
Well, I think we got to get out of being afraid to express ourselves.
Yes.
Would you agree with that, good brother?
Oh yeah, and thanks for having me on too. I've been sitting back just enjoying this conversation, but I think that's definitely a valid point. That a lot of people, for fear of how people perceive their expression, definitely do. Whether it's the substances or whether it's the negative behaviors, a lot of people exhibit those. And it's just, we have to get more comfortable with being ourselves.
And especially men. It's okay. I see brothers, they got great women. Because women want to hear what you're talking about. Right. They want to say, hey, baby, what's wrong? And ain't nothing wrong.
But then you have sisters, too. So I try to look at our community on both sides. So for as many brothers you have who respond that way, you have sisters who respond that way as well. And you might have more sisters who respond that way than you do brothers. Because oftentimes our men are not given a platform to have an emotion.
Outside of anger and rage.
Those
Absolutely. Are acceptable.
Absolutely. And so you have to look at this thing across the board where if we will allow them to heal. And again, there's a stigma that attaches to the Black man where a woman will tell from his mother to his grandmother, or his grandmother to his mother, to his woman or his women will say, toughen up.
Yeah.
You're
not
a man.
To cry.
That's right. Be
You're
a man.
sissy. Yeah,
be a man.
Sure.
And so this oftentimes, this stops black men from being able to be transparent enough to know, number one, that they are in a safe place.
Absolutely.
To express themselves enough to get the help that they need. So it's not just one-sided. You have to look at how much leeway we're giving. A black woman is giving a black man to find a platform or find safety with them, and being able to talk out of them these traumas.
And I think when somebody do that, and I see, if y'all agree with me that you have to, first of all, if somebody tell you something that's in confidence, you can't go run your mouth about it.
That's true.
And what it is that a lot of us are afraid to share our pains, particularly men, because when we open that womb up, we become emotionally vulnerable.
Absolutely.
So when somebody goes say, well, Brother Joel said, you mad.
Right.
So sometimes when women get mad, they tell your business.
That's true.
You know what I'm saying? Now a woman scorned, like ain't nothing like a woman scorned.
Right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to talk. But anyway, there's not like a woman scorned.
That's
You know what I'm saying? Let me pull that back. But there's nothing like a woman scorned. So whenever you dealing with a person, and what if it's a brother? Some brothers like that.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So when men are afraid to trust.
Absolutely.
Because of betrayal. And we got to understand, man, there's somebody out there, and that's when you go see the psychologist. Because they're under contract not to tell your business, and it's okay.
And then also, what I've noticed across time is that, number one, that there are so many therapists who look like us now. Mm-hmm. That's number one. And I feel like they're more equipped to handle our community versus someone outside of our community. Not saying that they don't have the skill set to handle what we go through in our community, but I feel like there's a disconnection.
The relatability.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. There's a disconnection to what we go through in our community. So I always say, and just in conversation alone, find someone who looks like us to talk to, because there are absolutely us out there in this field who is able to relate and then give you a clinical response and a sister or a brother response. Because sometimes the clinical aspect, we don't connect to that. Like you have to say some show enough, if you will, some show enough stuff to us sometimes, in order for it to connect. I
want to say this because I was watching CNN this weekend. It was talking about the field of African American psychology. Only 4% out of 100% is African American. So what a brother suggested is he's saying if you are in crisis, go see someone till you can get to see the person you want to see.
I like that.
You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes you might not be able to book with a black psychologist.
That's true.
Culturally,
a very good point.
And culturally, and I tell people, who say, why do you say black? Well, I say, if I'm trying to talk to somebody about something that's going on in Ukraine, I'm not Ukrainian.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right? So I can't identify so culturally, sometimes you have to do that. And some issues may not be culture. It just may be you. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So we have to keep that in mind. Absolutely. But so we want to open the door to let people know that it is okay, if you can't find somebody, particularly that's like us. Mm-hmm. But if you're in suicidal crisis, see somebody to talk to.
Absolutely. And we want to give that information out shortly. But I want to also, at this time, I want to give out the numbers if you care to call in. The number to call in is 313-868-0342, 313-868-0351, or 313-868-4336. And if you're just joining us, we are talking about mental health in the black community with Ms. Nigel Germain and Mr. Joel Jones. If you care to share this broadcast, you can pass along www.
Kings and Queens.
TV33WHPR.com.
Somebody got a phone call.
Caller, you're on the air. State your name and where you're calling from.
Fly Soul, Fly Gold, Silverado. I just want to give a shout out to all beautiful queens and kings on the airway
Thank you.
today.
Thank you so much.
Hey, I want to ask the question, how do you feel about the Woman King movie? I just heard that people are having a problem with this movie. They're saying that they're emasculating the women and demasculating the men. There's these certain messages in the movie, and because Europeans had something to do with, gaining profit off this movie, they continue to send messages out to uh, masculate the women and demasculate the men.
Well, first of all, it should not have taken the white community to tell our story. So you can't jump on that bandwagon if you weren't willing to do anything before the white community got that story. That's number one. Secondly, this movie depicted a true event, a true happenstance. So if you go and you read for yourself, all it takes is to take your smartphone and let your smartphone be smart for you. The smartphone is going to tell you the history of the Dahomey tribe and the Agoji army, which was an elite army in West Africa who did just what the movie is saying that it did.
So let's see if you want to respond to it.
I didn't. That was good.
Well, I just want to say, we got to. Let's be real about it. Most of our history is not written by us. Some of it is his story, and some of it is history.
Her story.
Right? And so we got to understand, and I often have to remind my people that we have to understand the Underground Railroad. Because there was white people who helped us through the Underground
Absolutely.
Railroads.
Absolutely.
A lot of those got killed in Alabama so we can't always look at history as it has to be written by black people who have no resource to write it.
That's
We
true,
don't have
too.
the
I love that.
finances. We don't have the resource to do it. So my thing is tell our story. Now let's talk about reparations. Write a story about that. But I'm just saying, I'm not a person that believes because somebody white wrote the story, that takes away from the meaning of what it's
Absolutely.
about.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
And the power
does not.
of that.
And then if
Absolutely.
we look at the Freedom Riders from the 60s, those were white people who was on the bus. They got beat down like us. So I'm all about just equality and fight for my people, but I feel we got to fight more. But I'm not a person that's going to be upset. And as far as demasculizing women, so I tell brothers all the time, you had to go to Africa, you'll be upset. Because them sisters over there ain't running around with weaves on and pretty feet and all that. They look like the women. I love them sisters. I love these strong women.
Let me ask you
I
this.
love strong women. And for those who saying they
has another
demasculize,
question.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Because
great show, but I just have another question regarding mental illness.
Sure.
I do believe in one love, one race, the human race. But at the same time, because of all the come on, y'all, help me out.
I'm trying to see
Colonization.
That's going on.
Okay.
And it's at the fault of both black hands, white hands, European hands, Chinese hands. I mean, colonization is going on, and that's historical as well. But do you think, and I do believe, that might have a lot to do with the mental illness that's going on and the demasculation that's going on within our black males as well. All of us, I think, got mental illness through
To
the
a degree.
stress of the snakeovers and the takeovers.
Well, I'm not disputing that. I agree with you. We can say that slavery contribute to our psychological thinking at this point, at some point. But at some point, we got to set responsibility for us.
And
We
your
can't keep
well-being.
putting off. You know what I'm saying? What I tell brothers, if you doing something to somebody, do you want somebody to do the same thing to you or your family? And if you tell me no, then you know it's wrong.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So I get it. We can't keep kicking the can down the road. We got to do for
Right.
self. You know what I'm saying? And that's just my belief as far as that. We got to do what we got to do.
And one word, accountability. And so that's another issue in our community is oftentimes, we shun accountability. And so when you take on that role by itself, you automatically want to get help for yourself. You want to do better, you know. And so there's so many inlets and outlets for to educate ourselves, and to even if we don't go to a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist, you know, there are self-help books, there are self-help videos that are there to strengthen us. So the very first thing would be to recognize and hold yourself accountable for your deeds, especially in our 40s and 50s. You know, anybody over 50, I feel like the statute of limitation has ran out on you being able to blame your mama and your grandmother and your children.
Absolutely.
And relational issues. You know, at some point, you know, Mike Jackson said it best. He says, I'm starting with the man in the mirror.
Absolutely.
I'm asking
Thank
him
you.
to change
Thank
his
you.
ways. And so when you take on that perspective of it, you will automatically want to, as they say, when we know better, we do better.
Absolutely.
That's right.
And
And so-
I want to say this too. YouTube mental health for black. If you want to find a culture, go there. Say, hey, black mental health.
Absolutely.
YouTube got it. What people want to do on YouTube, they want to watch videos with a lot of booty shaking and weed smoking. No, let's
Stuck
put
right
it
there.
out there. Let's say
It's
what
stuck
it
right
is. Right. I know. Let me cut it down. But it's real. We want to party all the time instead of trying to heal ourselves all the time. So there's ways you can do this in private. You know,
Absolutely.
then you begin to see the conduct that you need to change. But as the hip hop esthetician, Simply Lady T said, accept accountability. And I tell brothers all the time, this is my advice to brothers. You don't want to get together, don't worry. Because you end up in jail, they're going to force you to get together in prison. Because you're going to counseling. You ain't going to tell them you ain't going to see no psychiatrist.
Absolutely.
Because you ain't getting out on parole.
Yeah.
And at the end of the show,
That's sad, but it's real.
Hey,
absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? That's real. So why not try to do for self? And make your community better. Make your family proud. Evaluate yourself and say, am I really doing what I'm supposed to do to make my aunt proud, my sister proud, my brother proud? And if you say no, value. Come on, man. Get together, man.
And at the end
Well,
of the
let
show,
me just say this. I'm proud of your show.
Thank
and
you
I
so
want
much.
to know, do
Thank
you
you.
come on every Tuesdays and Mondays so I
No.
can keep up with you?
thank you so much. At the end of the show, I was going to say, at the end of the show, we are going to give out some imperative information where
Okay.
you can follow up on your own. And again, if it's for yourself or if it's for a family member or a friend, you're able to, again, you know, go online and what Tula Cabone said, you're able to, you know, type it in or, you know, text to, type
Black
auto,
mental health.
you know, you type it in and it's going to give you avenues for the help you need. When you're really seeking help, you'll find it.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Because that's
right.
biblical. And it ties into what we were talking about earlier on the show about the truth setting you free.
Yes.
You first have to be honest with yourself that you're a little imbalanced
Yes.
and that you need some support.
Yes.
Now, my sister was she wasn't the only one that was technically, because I have mental health issues on both sides of my
Okay,
family.
okay.
I've had uncles and aunts institutionalized and all
Wow.
that. So I'm very sensitive personally about myself, you know, and I've actually gone to counseling before.
Likewise.
Me too.
And I found it to be very, very beneficial
Me
to
too.
me. And so, you know, but I had to tell the truth to myself that I need a little
Absolutely.
bit more than prayer, a little bit more than this
Absolutely.
prayed over holy oil. I need a little bit more than that.
Talking to my
to-
homegirl.
to deal
Right.
with this
Yes.
particular issue.
Yes.
So, out of my love for myself and my family, I went and sought some support.
Likewise.
And I did the same thing. And you know, and sometimes I tell people, you gotta look who you're getting your advice from. You know, you know, some of us think,
We'll be right back after the station break.
thank you. We appreciate it. Come back and see us. The two beautiful fabulistics and Brother Joel.
In the world of digital broadcasting, transmitters and exciters sometimes do this. If this happens when you're watching WHPR TV 33, please do this. Watch us on Fire Stick, Roku, Apple TV, Google TV, or TV33WHPR.com. Download the WHPR TV app, and we can also be heard on Amazon Echo. So remember, if you see this, you can do this and support the station that supports you. You're watching WHPS TV, Detroit Live.
Thank you for returning back to Real Talk with Tula Cabal, hip-hop esthetician Lady T, Simple Lady T, and Sister Nigel Jermaine. Did I say it correctly?
Yes, you did.
I appreciate it. And we got another brother on the stage, Brother Cozine. We asked him to come particularly because we always tend to want to talk about something we don't know about, particularly psychologists. This brother did time, but he is doing well out here.
Praise
so I asked
God.
him to sit out here on the stage to talk about his experience. For those who think prison is a joke, it ain't. And he gonna kind of share with y'all what's going on. And for those who, because what I've been told, and this is what brothers say, that when brothers do more than 2 years of incarceration, that they need to get psychological counseling once they're released from prison. Because prison is an abnormal environment. They try to make it normalized. It's another form of slavery, but it can be very detrimental to a person's mental health.
Absolutely.
You know,
I feel
I
that
read
way.
something one time that said if you do more than 30 days in the solitary confinement, you begin to hallucinate.
Oh, yes.
And it damages part of the brain. Well, me and hip-hop esthetician Simple Lady T did a story on a guy named Albert Woodfox.
Yeah.
He did 44 years in solitary confinement, right? And right there in Louisiana,
Yeah,
in
Angola.
Angola.
Yeah.
He just died. Nobody picked his story up because he's a Black Panther. So we glad to have the brother on the panel. Hip hop esthetician,
welcome.
Simple Lady T. I'll turn it over to you. Then if you want to say, go from there.
Well, once again, welcome to the show. We're glad that you have decided to join us yet again. So this is a panel that we have had before, and if you're just joining us, we're talking about mental health in the Black community. And Brother Cozine, what I would like to ask is your perspective from being incarcerated and now being a freeman. How has the transition helped? How have you transitioned mentally? And what can you say to help brothers who are either still there or who are out and are in need of help?
Okay, thank you. I think I want to start by making note that by the time someone enters incarceration, including myself at 17 years old, you already need a therapist.
Wow.
Right? You already need the very fact that you're growing up as a person of color in America, you need this help. You need the community it provides. You need the certainty it provides in yourself, because gaslighting is just the minuscule thing that will happen to you out here, right? You will be completely whitewashed and sideswiped by what's going on, right? Perfect example. When coming home, right? For instance, myself, I did 20 years, right? So that's a good amount of time, right, to say, actually, so I was in prison longer than I was alive before I went to prison.
Wow.
So majority of my life was prison, right, when I came home. Now, the thing that makes that difficult is that where you think of all things that may have happened in prison during those developing years, right, from 17 to 38, right? But also when coming home into an environment that has itself changed, right, and expects something different of you than at 17, right? It's just that simple. When you knew society, you were a young one, right? And now you know society as an adult. Of course, you've grown to adulthood inside, but that's a different living, right?
Yes, it is.
And so when you come back, you also now have this idea of, well, how much of what is going on with me and what is wrong with me is myself as an individual, you know, my mental health issues, my emotional issues, is my situation as a formerly incarcerated person, 20 years removed and trying to catch back up, or it's my position as a Black man in America. There are so many things when coming home that you worry about because you don't. The irony is that the NBOC doesn't want you to be around those like you. So you have no real community to be able to see what's normal and what's not. You know, the way I feel, is that something that everyone feels or just simply me? Because for myself, it feels like it's me because I am the only one I know experiencing it right now. Right? Most other people have gone through the stages that I am going through right now in their mid-20s, or early 30s, etc. Right? So I think what makes it most important, or one of the things that makes it most important, is that when you're talking about folks who come home it's not just a 20 years of incarceration and the trauma and PTSD that comes with that that you have to deal with. It is the day-to-day trauma.
Yes,
Wow,
and
wow.
PTSD that is happening as you try to reestablish yourself
Gotcha.
inside society, which, let's be honest, didn't really want you in the first place.
That's right.
And now wants you even less because you have a stain and a mark.
That's
on you,
right.
right? So, the thing I think I want to leave on that note is that we have to recognize it didn't start when we were incarcerated, right? And I think that's one of the things that we kind of focus on and kind of lose track of the fact that we were something before we were incarcerated.
So do you feel like the thing that you went through before led you to incarceration?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that. I mean, let's be honest, right? I believe being a young black man in America, incarceration was just close to me. Period. I mean, the statistics, the stats show that. You know, by the I think it's by the time you're in the third or fifth grade, they already determine, exactly, the likelihood that you would be incarcerated for
Your literacy rate.
Yeah, right. So, the fact that I went to prison isn't really a surprise.
Oh, wow.
Right. And the fact that I was in such a state before going to prison that led me to prison isn't a surprise. Right. I mean, we look at the things that have been poured into our community, right? Not just narcotics we know from the 70s and the 80s, right? But
That's
also
right.
imagery,
That's
also
right.
education and the lack thereof.
That's right.
I was looking at a TikTok. I love TikTok. I get so many Jews off TikTok. And the sister was on there exposing that some building in Washington, which is very important, right? It has sculptures by a really famous sculptor, right? And on this particular building, it showed the 4 continents, right? It showed Asia, it showed Africa, it showed Europe, and I forget which other, right? The point being, every single woman who was on there was in regalia, right? The woman from Asia looked like a soldier. Each of them seemed like royalty, right? Until you got to the woman who was from Africa.
Wow, wow.
They have her laying on a rock, naked from the top down, looking disheveled with a lion on the other side of the rock. Right? But now I say this because I grew up with these images, with this idea, with an America that thought this about me.
Right.
The likelihood that I would go astray, very much so. Right?
Wow.
Very high.
Wow.
So can you, wow. That's how you say wow. Can you tell us some of your prominent achievements that you made, and one that I particularly know about since you've been out?
Oh, wow. Let's see. So I was fortunate enough when I was incarcerated to be a part of what's called the Michigan Review of Prisoner Creative Writing. It's out at University of Michigan. It's part of what's called the Prison Creative Arts Project. It's the longest running prison arts collective in the world as far as we know.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's been going on for a very long time. It's excellent. And from that, when I came home from being in cahoots with that gang, right? Because I say it because it really is like this family feeling. And that's important because we don't have a lot of community coming home, right? We have family and loved ones, but the sense, the feel of community, it's not quite there, right? And that's the thing that we really miss. So there's that, and from that, I went on to co-instruct a couple of courses with Dr. Ashley Lucas at the University of Michigan, one called The Atonement Project, the other called Theater Incarceration. I was also a managing editor of the book that I happened to be in for about 10 years called the Michigan Review of Prisoner Creative Writing. I was fortunate enough to become the editor of that. That was awesome. And from that, I transitioned to becoming executive director of a nonprofit in Washtenaw County. We were helping folks who were coming home find not only just community, right, but also what we call the wraparound services that someone needs, right?
And we just talked about that. We
That's
just talked about the wraparound.
fantastic.
We just talked about the wraparound program, and the other program that is helping gentlemen who have been incarcerated re-enter society.
Yeah.
And so, and you're saying that you were a part of that wraparound program. How
Well,
awesome is that?
I was actually, there's many services, many nonprofits that provide that service. I just happen to be executive director of a particular one that provided that service in Washtenaw County.
Gotcha.
Which had, you got to think about roughly 10 years ago, 10 to 12 years ago, Washtenaw had the highest rate of recidivism of any county in the state. Think about that. Where
Wow.
you have University of Michigan, where you have Eastern Michigan University, right? You have such wealth, but they had the highest recidivism rate. Right? And so I was fortunate enough to return home and to be able to parole to Ann Arbor, and this is where I found myself, and I was fortunate enough to be able to find myself in a position to provide that direct service to folks
Awesome.
in a way that they weren't getting from anyone else, right?
Praise
Because I had the
God.
know-how.
Yeah,
I've
for sure.
been through it. I
Anything
know
you want to
what
answer
they need.
to?
Well, I just am very fortunate that you were able to carve that out and to rehabilitate yourself through that
Absolutely.
horrific experience. I have a brother that's currently incarcerated for maybe the third or fourth time. Unfortunately, I've lost count. And just with the whole mental health piece and the lack of support And I really am a firm believer that he went back because he couldn't connect.
Absolutely.
You know, so he did
Absolutely.
something really foolish to go back because nothing else made sense, you know, as to why he would do that. But he was really struggling because, to your point, he went in at a certain age and he came back. It's hard for me to keep up, and I've never been incarcerated. So I can only imagine his disconnect in that way. And I'm just really happy that you were able to do that. Because had he gotten mental health support in the way that he needed it, I believe he would not have gone back. So the programs that you're a part of, and, you know, we just need to do better with supporting our loved ones, male
Absolutely.
and female, when they return to society, and not just get a job and, you know, go drop for the PO. But there are so many other things that we need to do. And I'm just happy that you were able to navigate through that, and because you have the firsthand experience, you're leading the charge to support others coming behind you. So,
My question is, do you feel when guys are incarcerated, when they go into incarceration, their time freezes? And what I'm saying is, when they see somebody that there was a nephew, and when they got in the niece, and when they got the nephew or niece is now
As an adult.
and they left him as a child. Do your mind freeze there? You know, do you still think as if the memories don't, because you didn't get a chance to transition with the growth in society?
That's a wonderful question, and it's one I've asked myself often, and I think it depends on context, right? So, for example, the example you gave of the niece. If I was in communication with that niece throughout my incarceration, right? If they came to visit me, right? Then that feeling of them passing by would not be there. Right? I was present, or at least present to hear about the things that were happening in their life and how they were developing, watching them grow, right? Now, if that was taken away from me, right?
And oftentimes it is.
Perfect example, my nephew, right? I was taken away. I didn't see him again until I came home, right? And there very much was that stark that dissonance, right? Trying to make sense of the little baby I knew, right? The young voice I would hear every now and then on the phone, and the man standing in front of me, right? So I think the short answer, it depends. Another example would be when I came home, my neighborhood. The first thing I noticed about my neighborhood and my home felt smaller, and my neighborhood had so much more growth, so much more greenery, right? So much more foliage everywhere, and that was a mark of how much time had been gone, right? And so in that way, it felt like time had frozen, right? And that I was jumping back in and had just missed it, right? Like it had frozen and then started. You know, so
even
yes,
in technology,
context, I think,
so even in technology, like when brothers go away and they've been gone for a long time, and I do feel like time does freeze because you are halted inside, and then the world continues on, and so I know brothers who when they come home, they didn't know what a cell phone was, they didn't know what a fax machine was, things of that nature, because technology and time went on. And so now you have to play catch up in every area of your life, from your family to trying to get to know friends again, trying to adapt yourself to the new society as well. And so yes, I would say that I would think that time does freeze, to a great degree. And then also I wanted to inquire, being home, how have you adapted mentally, and have you needed mental help, and have you received it?
Yes. So to answer those last two questions first, emphatically yes and yes.
Okay, awesome.
So the difference in my situation was I came home, right, to my father only for 45 days or so, a couple of months, right? And then I moved to an environment in Ann Arbor in Washington County, which I was not familiar with, right? So my situation had a lot more alienation, right? A lot more feelings of being alone. And that's one thing I think that made my job so wonderful was I was able to find community in helping those like me.
Gotcha.
Right? So I was able to find some type of sense of community in that. And so I think that's what has made my experience different and maybe more alienating and made me feel more alone than perhaps the average person, because the average person comes home to, no matter how far removed, oftentimes they come home to family. They come home to children. I have no children, right? My mother passed, my grandmother passed, like everyone's dying. Okay. So I come home to very limited family. And then on top of that, I am now physically removed 30 or 45 miles north where, Detroit and Ann Arbor, ain't nobody's crossing those unless they're going to a game, right? Let's just be honest, right? So now I'm up there and no one's coming to see me, no one's visiting me, I'm alone again. So in that respect, for me, yes. But I think for some folks, they have family, right? And that makes that transition easier. Not easy.
Not easy.
Right?
Like
because I think one of the things that happens when you have family is that now you also have more folks who you're worried about how they feel about you, whether or not you're doing the right thing and serving the role you're supposed to serve or feel you're supposed to serve in your family that you've been missing.
Absolutely. So there's a gentleman in our family that way, and I feel that he absolutely he has whatever he missed, he is fulfilling. As far as family, as far as approving himself to society. And what I always say to gentlemen like yourself is that, number one, you are not your past. I want to share that. You are not your past. And don't allow people to keep putting you in that category. Especially when you know that you have worked so hard to become a different person. Again, what we said earlier, accountability. Oftentimes, brothers like yourself, you've went there, you've learned, you learned your lesson, and you get out, and you're trying to live out that change that you have become, and society will take you and stuff you right back in that envelope.
Have you had that happen where you feel like society is kind of secretly stigmatizing you and telling you, no, that's not what we're doing, and that's what they're doing?
I mean, the reason why. So I say I was former executive director because I quit that position because I was dealing with that in the job, the very job that's our mission. Right? The very reason we were in existence was to serve folks who were from the incarcerated who came home in Washington County. Yet I had to fight to do that. I had to fight with my board to do that. And oftentimes I had to do it on my own. And the irony is that I created success. We were successful during COVID, right? In a year and a half during COVID, we were more successful than the organization had been 4 years prior to that before they hired me. But yet that wasn't good. Right, that made the leadership feel like I was taking power, right? Because honestly, let's be honest, right? The leadership were older white folks who didn't even know Washington had a problem until 4 years ago, right? You've been here 70 years and now you just find out there's a problem. Maybe you aren't the one to be leading, right? So the point I'm making is, yes, around in every respect, I still see that even in spaces where I'm supposed to be supported and I'm supposed to be believed to have this, right? It's very difficult, right? We call it carceral state for a reason. It's very difficult for anyone and all of us to get out of that in momentary reactions, right? We fall to our default, right? And our television has taught us what to believe about each other. Our radio has taught us what to believe. Our conversations that feed those have taught that. It's very much a cultural thing, right? And that's what makes it so difficult. It was make our mental health issues so difficult. Not seeking or caring about mental health, right, is cultural.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And now it's not cultural because of anything I think that has to do with us as individuals, but the way we have been put inside the society and what structurally has happened to influence our culture, right? I want to be sure, I'm going to be careful about that and sure about that. It's not because I think there's anything inherently wrong or is missing from us. It's because the society structures that we've been put in, especially in American and Western, is disallowing us to recognize how much we need that and to provide ourselves with that community and that support.
Yeah, because it's more comfortable in other communities. It's just as regular as going to the dentist. But in our community, when we start playing the dozens, calling people crazy, no one wants that stigma. Right. So, we'll pretend that we're well when we're not well.
Absolutely.
And because I'm conscious of that, I keep an eye on myself.
Absolutely.
I have 2 young black sons and, my other family members that I strive to impact by my example and saying it's okay to go.
Absolutely.
If you need some support. I personally believe it's not okay to go. Like, if you're not getting mental health support, I think that's the problem.
Absolutely.
Because we go through so much trauma and drama just on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
And just having a safe space to just unpack that where you won't find this conversation at Thanksgiving dinner.
Right.
You don't have to worry about your friend not telling you the whole truth because that's your friend. Just an unbiased person to just unpack it, help you smooth out your thoughts, and send you on your way.
Absolutely. So we want to...
There's also socioeconomic. So I want to put that in and make sure that, because for myself, for instance, when I was able to get mental health, it's when I was able to have more money. I was in a better environment, a richer neighborhood, etc. Right? Those resources were more available to me. So I want to make sure that I know that that's also a large part of the difficulty is our socioeconomic economic status and how expensive therapy is, right? Like, it's ridiculous.
So speaking of resources, I want to share this information with the public, as I promised. So the mental health resources for the Black community, I want to start with a program called BEAM, BEAM. It's Black Emotional and Mental Health, and that is a training and movement building and grant making organization dedicated to the healing, wellness, and liberation of the Black community. And again, that program is called BEAM, BEAM. Then there's the Boris Lawrence Henson Foundation, changing the perception of mental illness in the African American community by encouraging people to get the help that they need. Focuses on stigma, self-stigma reduction, and the building trust between Black community and the mental health field, and that's so important. And then there's Therapy for Black Girls, which is an online space encouraging mental wellness of Black women and girls as a referral tool to find the therapist in your particular area. And two more that I would love to share. The Loveland Foundation is a financial assistance to Black women and girls seeking therapy. So if you have someone who can't afford to go and get mental health. These are avenues that you can look into. And then this one I feel is the most important because, again, we oftentimes we leave the Black man out of the equation. And so many aspects of expressly mental health. And so there's Therapy for Black Men, and it's primarily a therapist directory for Black men seeking therapy, including resources. And so I want you guys to look into those, and if you need that information, myself or Tula, we are available for you to reach out to us via our social platforms, where I try to answer as many questions as I can regarding this, because again, working in the public, I see a lot of mental illness in sisters, and then being a single Black woman, I see a lot of mental illness in trying to deal with Black men who again, as Sister Nigel have stated, unpacking. They have not unpacked their junk.
Well, I want to say this about, and I think this is important. Statistically, between the age, second leading cause of death for Black men or Black children are between the ages of 10 and 19 is suicide.
Yes.
Between the ages of 10 and 19 is suicide. Second leading cause of death. A lot of brothers who I have talked to have stated, I have contemplated suicide. Because the stigma, the trauma, the pressure that's on them. When you see a brother, and me and Simple Lady T talk about it. We was riding down here one day, and we seen a brother walking down the street with no shoes on, talking. He was traumatized. So what broke him to that point? So we got to understand, and I tell brothers, it's okay to get help, man. It's okay to go talk. And sometimes you don't have to tell people what you're doing.
That's true.
If you feel somebody going to laugh at you, keep it to yourself.
And then oftentimes when our community sees that type of instance that you just described, they grab the camera and they film it and they put it out there, and it becomes a laughable moment. And instead of helping us grow and helping us get the help that we desire. And so this panel has been amazing.
Well, I just want to add this to piggyback off what she said. They laugh until it's their family.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. Because that reciprocity, African concept, what you put in the universe come back to you.
Absolutely.
Then it's no longer funny.
Right.
So we got to understand as a community, everything ain't a funny for Facebook and TikTok. We need to realize, as I believe, we got to accept accountability.
Absolutely.
We can't keep blaming somebody else for what we need to do.
And being more compassionate and sensitive.
Absolutely.
I have a neighbor, and he was just picked up 2 days ago by the police. He really struggles with mental health issues, and then we just bear patiently as the neighbors. We know he suffers, so no one is out picking with him, or we just allow him to have his experience until, his parents are able to help him. So that's another thing, like you said, not laughing, but just being compassionate. But by the grace of God, it could be one of us.
Absolutely.
And any trauma, it can be one of us.
Absolutely. I wanted to say this, like oftentimes we won't call for help because of how the police handle.
It's another layer.
Absolutely. And so hopefully we will be able to have this forum again, and we'll be able to address that aspect of it, where if they do find the clinical aspect of help when they're in that mental episode, and 9/11 is called, and they show up, they don't know how to be compassionate towards someone who has a mental illness. And oftentimes we've seen that a lot of people with mental illness lose their lives when they encounter.
Well, so I would say now Detroit Police Department, they do have a mental health department that comes with the police. But when you call, kind of tell them, hey, they're having a mental breakdown.
Yeah.
Don't just call and say, well, he kicking the doors in.
He acting up.
You know, because then they're going to come with full force.
Yes.
Say, hey, he having a mental breakdown.
Yes.
You know, we need help here. You know, we don't know how to deal with it.
Because those two Inkster police were very compassionate, I would say,
Absolutely.
for the record, and I was very pleased.
Yeah,
with
so-
them
We would like to
supporting
thank
him.
you for joining us at Real Talk with Tula Cabone and the hip hop esthetician Simply Lady T. And we once again would like to thank Miss Nigel Germain, Mr. Cosine Welch Jr., and seated outside of the camera's range is Mr. Jewel Jones. We'd like to thank you so much in TV land. We're so used to being on the radio.
So I want to say, you know, can you tell us a little bit about your show, their show, because they invited us on their show, and we really appreciate it. And the show is dynamic. I listen to it every day that I work out. I'm listening to that show in the morning.
Well, it's my nephew's show, the Jewel Jones show, the foundation, and we're on Monday through Friday on 9:10 a.m.
Absolutely.
And he is the host, and he's allowed me to be his co-host producer, but he does an exceptional
Yes, he
job.
does.
Absolutely.
And he's just a natural at being
That's our favorite show
fabulous.
to show up on.
And so we welcome you to call and join us. We have a myriad of topics, and we have lots of fun.
Absolutely.
But again, that's the foundation, hosted by State Rep Jewel Jones.
Absolutely.
On 9:10 a.m. Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m.
And I want to just say, Brother Joel Jones, you know, I've always given him props. I am so proud of him for being a young black man.
Absolutely.
That's a state senator.
Wrap it up.
You know, so I
State
appreciate
rep.
state rep. I'm sorry, state rep, state rep. So you know, we end our show by saying, "Adopt a senior." We love you, Uncle Bill, and we love you, Auntie Rosie, Rose Tab. We love you. Go ahead and hit me with it. But anyway, she ain't gonna say nothing. Listen to what people say, but watch what they do, because what they do is who they really are, and love who you are, because everybody is beautiful.
Absolutely.
Oh, she agreed. Oh, but anyway, Cosine, would you like to say anything to wrap it up?
Be well, and when you can, be of service.
I love
Amen.
that. I love that.
Be well and be of service. Well, thank you. Throw the fist up. You know what I'm saying? Power to the people. We love y'all. We see y'all soon.
Till we meet
Goodbye.
again.
Till we
All
meet
right.
again. Bye now.